Asif Hameed Ors versus State of Jammu and Kashmir and Ors. AIR 1989 SC 1899. Facts. This case originated from a challenge to the selection process for admission to the MBBS/BDS courses in the two government medical colleges of Jammu and Kashmir for the academic session 1988-89. Several unsuccessful candidates filed petitions challenging the selection process on the grounds that it violated the directions laid out by the Jammu and Kashmir High Court in a previous case, Jyotsna Sharma and Ors. We State of Jammu and Kashmir, 17th April 1987. In Jyotsna Sharma, the High Court had directed the state government to entrust the medical college selection process to an independent statutory body, free from executive influence. In response, the state government issued the Jammu and Kashmir Government Medical Colleges, Selection of Candidates for Admission, Procedure Order, 1987, constituting a competent authority to make selections for professional courses like MBBS and BDS. However, the unsuccessful candidates contended that the new process was not truly independent of the executive and had irregularities, including discrepancies in the selection criteria, methodology, and the process of conducting the entrance examination and viva voce. They claimed that these issues rendered the selection invalid. Issues before the court. 1. Judicial competence, whether the High Court had the authority to issue directions to the state government to constitute a statutory body for the selection process in medical colleges. 2. Compliance with High Court orders, whether the state government had substantially complied with the High Court's directions in Jyotsna Sharma by issuing orders and constituting a competent authority for the medical college selection process. 3. Influence and fairness of selection process, whether the selection process was free from executive influence and conducted fairly as per the principles of transparency and fairness. 4. Judicial overreach, whether the High Court overstepped its judicial powers by directing the legislature and the executive to establish a statutory body for selections to medical colleges. 5. Validity of the selection, whether the discrepancies alleged by the unsuccessful candidates were valid grounds for nullifying the selection process for the 1988-89 academic session. Court's observations. The Supreme Court, in its judgment delivered by Justices Kuldeep Singh, K.N. Singh, and K.J. Shetty, made significant observations regarding the separation of powers and the role of the judiciary in policy matters related to executive decisions. Separation of powers. The court emphasized that while the Indian Constitution does not recognize an absolute doctrine of separation of powers, the framers of the Constitution have carefully delineated the functions of the judiciary, executive, and legislature. The judiciary should not interfere with the legislative or executive functions unless there is a constitutional violation. The court held that the direction of the High Court in Jyotsna Sharma, asking the state government to constitute a statutory independent body, was inappropriate. The court clarified that the power to enact laws and establish such a statutory body lay with the legislature, and it was not within the judicial domain to issue such directions. Competence of the High Court. The court held that the High Court erred in Jyotsna Sharma by overstepping its judicial role. The judiciary cannot compel the legislature to enact specific laws or establish statutory bodies, as that is a matter of legislative policy. Judicial directions to this effect violate the principle of separation of powers. Compliance by the state government. The Supreme Court found that the state government had substantially complied with the High Court's directive in Jyotsna Sharma by issuing the Procedure Order, 1987, which created a competent authority to oversee the selection process for medical colleges. While the High Court had originally recommended a statutory body, the competent authority was still an independent body, established to carry out the selections. Nature of selection process. The court emphasized that the selection process for admission to medical colleges, involving objective tests and viva voce, did not involve judicial or quasi-judicial functions. The executive was well within its rights to establish the criteria for selection. As long as the process was transparent and in accordance with established laws, the courts should not interfere. Judicial overreach. The court expressed concern over increasing instances of judicial overreach, where courts assume roles that belong to the executive or legislative branches. The court made it clear that judicial review must respect the separation of powers and that courts should refrain from making decisions that properly belong to other branches of government. Decision of the court. The Supreme Court allowed the appeals filed by the state of Jammu and Kashmir and the successful candidates who had already been admitted to the medical colleges for the 1988-89 session. The appeals filed by the unsuccessful candidates were dismissed. The court held that the High Court had exceeded its authority by directing the creation of a statutory body for conducting selections, which is a matter for the legislature to decide. It ruled that the selection process carried out by the competent authority, as established by the Procedure Order of 1987, was valid and free from significant executive influence. The selection process, consisting of an objective test followed by viva voce, was deemed an accepted and fair method for admissions to the MBBS/BDS courses. The Supreme Court's decision in Asif Hameed Ors versus State of Jammu and Kashmir Ors is an important judgment in the context of judicial intervention in executive and policy matters. The judgment underscores the importance of respecting the separation of powers between the judiciary, executive, and legislature. It held that while the judiciary has the power of judicial review, it cannot issue directives that compel the executive or legislature to perform specific acts, such as creating statutory bodies, as these are matters of policy and governance. The judgment also highlighted the need for courts to exercise restraint and respect the autonomy of the executive and legislative branches, especially in areas like public administration and educational admissions. It reaffirmed that judicial review must be limited to ensuring the legality of executive actions and should not interfere with policy making, unless there is a violation of constitutional principles. The ruling set a precedent for maintaining the balance of power between the three branches of government and preventing judicial overreach, particularly in the field of educational admissions and recruitment processes, where the executive has broad discretion.